Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this is the brand new MacBook Air. This is the Mac for probably most people, despite what some of the specs say. So I thought we'd take a little bit closer look, and I'll talk about what it's like to use over the past week that I've been using it. So the MacBook Air comes in at $1199 and goes all the way up to $2599 with 1.5 terabytes of storage. So this is the model I think most people will get, and this one comes in at $1399. And what that gives you is a 1.6 gigahertz Core i5 Y series, but boosted up to 7 watts to give it a little bit more power. It also turbo boosts up to 3.6 gigahertz. Now it comes in with 8 gigabytes of RAM, upgradable to 16 gigabytes, and this has 256 gigabytes of storage. It also has Intel UHD graphics 617. Now, this is the configuration I think most people will get with the 256 gigs of storage at about $1,400. Some places are already offering $100 off of this price. And I think 128 is not enough, but for people looking for an Air, I think that's what most people will want. Now, it comes in at 2.75 pounds or 1.25 kilograms, and it's very familiar as far as a MacBook Air is concerned. It tapers down from one end to the other, and then we have our headphone jack on the right. Then on the back, we don't have anything else. On the side, we've got 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and this is different than the MacBook. The MacBook only has USB-C, but the MacBook Air has Thunderbolt 3. So we have 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. It means you could use an eGPU. And then very thin right here. Now on the bottom, we don't have anything else, nothing really spectacular, and no backlit logo anymore. So we're missing that. Now if we open it up, you'll see we've got the modern keyboard, but we do have Touch ID. And one thing I'm really grateful for is they've gotten rid of the touch bar. I know a lot of people like it. I just want the function keys back. So this part is something that I really appreciate. And these new keys do have very little travel, but they work really well, and they are a little bit clacky. So you'll hear they sound a little bit clacky. It might sound like you're angry typing, but for the most part, they work well. Most people I've talked to say they actually like it after they've used it because the keys are larger and you can hit them more easily. That's my experience as well. Now, as far as the trackpad is concerned, it's a little bit smaller than the MacBook Pros, but it's definitely bigger than the last generation, and it works really well. Just like any Mac trackpad, it's force touch as well, so you can push and then push again. And overall, it's a great little package with Touch ID on it. Now you might notice here we have speakers. Instead of being under the keyboard, we have real speakers this time, and they actually sound pretty good. So if we go to one of my videos here, so take a listen. I'll move the microphone so maybe you can hear it a little bit better. So the speakers are nice and loud. I think you'll be really happy with them if you're coming from a previous MacBook Air. And let's talk about this display. Now, the display looks really good. The one complaint that most people have is while it is a Retina display, it's 13.3 inches from corner to corner. It's a Retina display at 2560 by 1600 and 227 pixels per inch. And I think the display looks great. It doesn't go as bright as the MacBook Pro. So it goes up to 300 nits. I did a little research, and the current MacBook Air is about the same brightness. So right around that 300 nit mark, you're going to get the same brightness out of things like a Dell XPS or some of the HP equivalents as well. So the MacBook goes a little bit brighter, around 500 nits. So it's good for most people unless you're in very bright sunlight. Now we do have a 720p FaceTime camera, so you can use that for FaceTime. And then, of course, you want to know about battery. And the battery on this is pretty good. I think most people running your average tasks, maybe in Safari or something that's Apple related, Safari, Mail, Calendar, those sorts of applications, you're probably going to get 8 to 10 hours. But if you're using Chrome and you're doing video playback and things like that, it's closer to 8, 7 to 8. So depending on what you're doing. And then of course, if you're doing things like video editing or photo editing, that's going to use up a lot more power. So if we take a look at the video editing capability, Final Cut Pro actually works on this. In fact, it worked on the previous MacBook. People thought it wouldn't work, but it actually does. So what I've got here is my Samsung T5 drive. This is what I use with my main editing Mac, and this has all of my Final Cut Pro files on it. So if I plug it into the side here, because these are 40 gigabytes per second ports, this will work just fine. So we'll connect this, wait for it to show up, and then I'll open a library in Final Cut Pro. So what we have here is my timeline of the iPhone X 1 year later review. If I hit the spacebar, you'll see playback is nice and smooth. Up here in this window is what we're looking for. And it's actually nice and smooth. If I scrub through it, you'll see it works fine. These are not rendered files either. This is before rendering. You can tell that by these little dots right here. So it's prior to rendering. Everything's nice and fast. You'll see I can zip right through this, no problem. And then exporting it isn't going to be as fast as something such as a MacBook Pro or one of the new Mac Minis or an iMac Pro. Now, I ran a render test using an external Samsung T5 drive. I used it on both devices and then deleted the render files for each test. Now, the older device, which is a 2017 MacBook Pro, it was the top of the line at the time, did it in 13 minutes and 58 seconds. Then testing it on the 2018 MacBook Air, that exported in 50 minutes and 56 seconds. So it will do the job, but it's significantly slower. So if you have a time-sensitive project or you do that sort of work a lot, you may want to consider getting the Pro instead. So I ran a Geekbench on this MacBook Air and also a MacBook Pro from 2016 so we could compare. So I took a screenshot of it, and it was 2,900 for the single-core score and 6,849 for the multi-core score. So that's okay, but if we compare it to a 2016 dual-core MacBook Pro, we've got 4,264 for single-core and 8,729 for multi-core. So there are better options out there if you need more power. If you're using things like Pages, of course, if you're using Pages, maybe Safari, go to Apple. Maybe you're on Apple or you want to open a tab and go to my website here. You'll see everything's super fast. It loads quickly, just like you'd expect. You can switch to Pages or Word or whatever you prefer to use. Have the App Store open, have your mail open, have your calendar open, photos, everything. And it's not going to slow down because it just seems to work well. And that's really what people looking for a MacBook Air are after. They want it to be a simple computer to use that just works. So that's it for the MacBook Air. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Is it something that you think most people will pick up, or do you think they'll opt for the MacBook Pro? I personally think that Apple is revamping their lineup. They made a little bit of a mistake with their Pro machines, and they're bringing back what everybody wanted, a little bit more configurable MacBook Air, a Mac Mini, and some new MacBook Pros, and a Mac Pro eventually. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and like. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.